All right. So welcome to the January 13th, 2025 Neskowin Community Plan Steering Subcommittee meeting. Welcome to committee members and Mark. And we have no one from the public here, so I think we can go with the let's see, the chair's here, Ann's here, Lynn's here, Mark, Tom Seep is here, and Guy Sievert's here, and Mark is the chair of the NCAC. Okay, so first, may we approve the agenda for today's meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, approval secured. Review the minutes of the December, I think December 30th meeting. Had that wrong in the minutes. Well, with that correction of the date of the last meeting, do we have approval of the minutes as submitted?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, approval of the minutes. Please let me know at this time if you have a conflict of interest in today's anything on the agenda today. Let me know right now if you have a conflict.
None.
No. I guess so. With no notice, there are no conflicts of interest as declared by our members. Okay, so I think we'll pick up where we left off. Put a bookmarker in the plan, so if we can share the screen. I think it was page 13 of the document. We were just getting into parking issues on middle housing translation that, I mean, I think I have a copy here on my desktop. I don't
know which document are you referring to?
Talking about your document, the cottage cluster discussion.
Oh, cottage cluster. Okay, I'd completely forgotten. I'd lost context. PowerPoint. Okay, I got it.
I think we're at page 13. You put a page break there.
Yeah, I did.
And Ran, it would be helpful if we follow the format of the
Hi, Sarah.
Agenda and start with each topic under that heading of starting first with what cannot be altered and must be included in the community plan and doing them sequentially so that I can capture the minutes in that order.
Okay. So and when Tom shares the document, we will ask that question.
We have Sarah on board now.
Right. So she can clarify.
I know that you'd worked on some things, Sarah. Did you want to go through those? I don't know what your time frame is.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tom. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Randall, I was just pulling up your agenda. So what I am prepared to talk about today is the GIS mapping. So I had that. So we talked about today, that would be my contribution. So I do have that ready to go.
Okay.
And have some information to share with you guys in terms of the table and what we can and can't. Like,
so let's start there. Let's do that, and I'm gonna stop on the other agenda piece, and we'll just go right to Sarah's piece.
All right, so we'll begin with the GIS mapping.
Yeah. And just quickly, because I think I can
share.
Okay, so in terms of on the agenda, the review for middle housing audit, what can and can't be included, and clusters. So Tom and I have actually done quite a bit of work on this. I met with the consulting team last Friday, and I sent Tom a bunch of stuff today. He and I actually visited earlier today. So I think if the group is okay, we would like to come back to that at the next meeting. So we have something organized and ready to share.
Great.
Okay,
Does that work? I mean, we can give you a couple of teasers today, but I think Tom and we actually have another meeting on the books for this week, next week.
Next week.
Next week.
This week's out.
Yeah, so we've been trying to meet once before each one of these meetings to put things together for the group.
So
We have that meeting on the books.
So does that mean that we not only have the statue to build of Tom, but we have to get him a halo?
Yes. I would say a halo and maybe some chocolate and flowers. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I think a
All right.
neon halo.
I'm just keeping track of all this on my Tom list. So, okay, go
Fair
ahead.
enough. We'll have to compare later, Lynn.
Okay, perfect.
So, okay, so would you like me to go ahead then and jump into the GIS stuff?
Please,
Okay, so so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a little interlude because I feel like I need to do kind of a
set up.
GIS and tax assessment 101 because it's
Okay.
gonna play into our conversation. So Neskowin is unique yet again. Always unique for all the right reasons. Because, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to share my screen a couple of times, but I want to tee this up. So I'm actually going to do a share screen now. I want to talk. Okay. Okay. Are you guys seeing? Uh-oh.
We're good.
Big
Uh,
map.
Did I do the
Wrong
right
map.
one? Okay.
Wrong map.
Huh?
It was a big map.
Okay, perfect. That's what I want you to see. All right. Okay. So I'm going to use my GIS map that looks just a little different than yours. Okay, so just a little refresher. All of this shaded area are properties within the Neskowin boundary, community boundary. And then, well, that doesn't help me. Let's see. I'm getting a little clicky happy here. All right. So these properties east of the highway, so you have Hills of Neskowin, and you have the old golf course down here, right? This swath of, I don't know, for those of us who can see the color difference, it's like that reddish raspberry color. All of
Okay.
these properties are zoned Neskowin RR. So they're in the boundary, they're a residential zone. The work we are doing applies here. Everybody knows that. For purposes of the conversation, we also know Sahali is up here, Viking Estates, we got some wetlands, but really the focus of the Neskowin RR zone is through this swath right here. When I started doing the GIS work with the GIS contractor, we realized that we could not pull the data to share accurately for these properties because most of them have some sort of special assessment, meaning a tax deferral, so that they don't get charged residential property tax rates. Okay. So most of these properties in here, so I would say north of the old golf course and south of Hills of Neskowin, almost all of those properties, because of their size, have a tax deferral that puts them in a farmer forest program. It does not change their zoning. What it means is, I haven't developed my land. I don't want to pay full residential rates. So I would like to say that for now, I am using it as a timber stand or for some sort of farm related use. And they have to go through all of these like criteria through the Tillamook County Assessor's Office to see if they qualify for those special assessments. And then what happens is a good chunk of their property goes under a reduced property tax rate. And it will stay that way until they actually develop. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Tying it back to GIS. We pull data to create GIS maps off of the assessor's data, which means to query or to search for residential properties, the query is not going to immediately pull the underlying zoning designation. It's going to pull the property class assessment from the Tillamook County Assessor's Office. So for properties that don't have, for properties that have one of these special tax assessments, they're not going to pull for our data. Not the way we want to see it.
So Sarah, quick question.
Uh-huh.
So these are the properties that are presumably the first target for developers who want to put in additional
Cottage clusters, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and part of so can't we just take all of them and say this much is in rural residential farm forest and they have had a tax subsidy for years, and they are all potential with some, obviously conditional use exceptions or something for the expanding the housing capacity of Neskowin.
Right. So they don't need a conditional use or an exception because they are still a residential zone in Neskowin.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Right.
But the punchline here is I'm going through these by hand.
Oh,
Because it's the only way I can do it to give you what you want to see. But to your point, Lynn, I think what is safe to assume, all of these properties are eligible or capable, maybe is a better word, are capable for middle housing. I did talk to Chris Keola and we talked about septic systems and different things. And he said, absolutely, even through a local on-site sanitation permit that didn't require an expansive system kicked up to DEQ permitting, these properties, we could, for a triplex or a fourplex, permit a septic system at the county permitting level for these properties. So I think I still want to do the work because I still want to know, and I want you to know. But I think that what we can safely assume is that all of these Neskowin are our properties here in the swath right here on the east side of the road that are in that raspberry pinky color. They're eligible, they're capable of middle housing development. Okay, that makes sense to everybody. Just with the way that the assessor's office polls, they designate for property class data. I can't use our normal way of finding that.
Right.
Finding that out.
So Sarah, I appreciate the extra work that you're doing. And I also think this map in a hard copy in colors that people can see or discern should be a handout at our next community meeting where we're finalizing all this stuff.
Yes.
Where we can say to people, this was the design of the rural residential zone was way back like 50 years ago was we don't know what's going to happen with this property. So we're going to give it this designation. We're going to subsidize their taxes or give them a tax cut with some kind of resource activity. But in this era, this is exactly, not all of it, but I would suggest that much of it is where you can get 40 slots of, or whatever Neskowin's share of the middle housing development is. And I think we need to be explicit about that, maybe not in those terse terms, but we need to explain it to people because those of us who grew up with rural residential, but that means you're 70 or older. So let's explain it to people what rural residential was, what it was intended to be, the
Mhm.
advantage that property owners get there.
Yep.
And give people that at least that much clarity for this next discussion we have with them.
Right. So, exactly. And so what I would say is that those special assessments are not exclusive to the rural residential zone. They can be in any zone.
Right.
What happens is when you go to develop, or, you know, I kick out a building permit or something like that, subdivision decision. Usually what you have to do is go back and pay 6 years of back taxes. So when you take it out of that deferral program, like, you can stay in it, but when you're ready to pop out because you want to exercise your property rights for that zone, there's some tax, you know, back pay you got to do. So talking to the GIS contractor about that, then we started talking about, okay, what is it that people really want to see? What do they really want to know? And based on our conversations, what I drilled down to is for the other parts of Neskowin, the village, South Beach. What does it like? How much potential for new development or middle housing is there in these areas? Because quite frankly, I don't hear anybody really worried about the east side.
Sarah,
right?
Sarah, I would respectfully disagree.
Okay, good.
Everyone in the village is worried about the east side.
Okay.
Because what people can't get in their heads, or at least things they stop me on the street on, is where on earth are you going to put 40 cottage clusters in the village? And my answer is, we're going to figure that out, but don't forget,
right,
there's a whole bunch of land on the other side of the highway that is in our community plan. So I actually think people in the village are particularly concerned about how east of the highway is going to get treated.
Okay. Thank you for that. But in terms of like, what I started working with the contractor with was then, what does this look like elsewhere? So
Yeah.
what is the potential in the village? What is the potential in South Beach, etc.? So then we did a map, because not many properties have those special assessments in the R1 and R3 zones, because most of them are west of the highway and don't have those assessments or an opportunity for those assessments just simply because of property size. We focused on those two zones and came up with a map. So I'm going to go ahead and share this one. And then I have a table to go with it, but I'm going to walk you through the map first. And we did not do the map in color. I tried to make this as simple and as clean as possible. Okay, so I'm going to start with my key. Key is shaded properties. You see that highest and best use vacant again, because we actually had two property classes. One was specifically for the old golf course on the east side that I had to pull in, zoned R1. So we have vacant. So what I would focus on is residential, vacant, zoned R1 and R3. Don't worry about the H and B, because that's just our background part of our criteria. Okay, so you got your Neskowin community boundary and the lots. So based on just vacant properties in those zones, they are the properties that are highlighted. So very clear, very clean. This is the picture. Okay.
Yep.
And again, assuming, so here's the highway, here's all our east side. But really, these are the properties that are highlighted that are vacant.
I think this is terrific, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, okay, so
So Sarah, could you just go back to our road, Edelman
Yep.
Lane?
and here is something that I would say too. Tom and I, because I showed this map to Tom earlier to practice. Tom's my practice person to walk things through. Thank you, Tom.
Double halo.
That's right. There are a couple of properties in here I know we've issued permits for, but they're not on the tax rolls yet. So until
so
that
this is-
value gets on the tax roll, they're still shaded as vacant.
Well, I'm wondering how the determination of vacant, so on our road,
Mhm.
go down Edelman, which sticks out over the golf course there. The large lot at the bottom, so it's 2 lots down from the one that you have occupied. That's totally empty. We own that lot and there's no house on it.
This one, I'm right here, right?
I think if farther down, here's Edelman Way, and then you go back up the hill.
Come
Oh,
back
right
up,
here.
go all the way
So
down.
here's the saddle.
Yeah, now go to
No.
the pie shape. So you see the pie shapes? So you got keep going down further
Go
south.
down here
Oh, down here.
So
by the
those are the,
7th tee.
those are the pie shapes. Now we actually live on one of those pie shapes. We own we own the 2 pie shapes on the left. Okay, one is our house, one is the studio. So those 2 are got it. You go down to the next lot, that's occupied. That's got a house. The next lot is empty, the next lot is empty, and the next lot is empty.
I don't know why those didn't show.
And that's what I'm wondering about, whatever system you used to come up with that. It didn't pick up
Who were they?
Wait,
both.
but isn't that what the map shows, is that they're empty?
No, it shows
So
a
the
pic-
map, the highlighted properties are the empty ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
the dark
sorry.
one.
Right, but
okay.
Guy, didn't you just say all the ones you described?
Or light.
Oh, okay, okay.
so the only accurate, well, the accurate one is the on Edelman Way is the one that is blacked out. I guess it's black. That's accurate. That's an empty lot. But the next 2 are also empty.
Oh, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And both of those 2 lots we own.
So I don't know why those didn't show up. I'm looking, it may have been a property class whole. Cause I show them in highest and best use. Let's see.
Well, they are. They're very nice. The elk there love it. They kind of they overnight there, especially there by the 7th tee.
Yeah. So it could have been a property class thing. I mean, the map, like I said, because of the way we had to pull the data. So we may
Yeah.
need to add some to this just based on village knowledge or community knowledge.
Yeah,
So you're talking about those 2 right here, correct?
Correct.
right.
Okay.
But this
Yeah.
this overall, I mean, I think when you get this map out,
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
we
people,
can,
they're gonna
local
say-
knowledge can correct it, right?
they're
Yeah.
gonna look at it and say, change this, change that. But this is the first look we've had
Mhm.
that is this clear about capacity for middle housing, which is tremendously helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. And and here's a couple things. So here's obviously the golf course. The property extends beyond the community boundary. We can't partially highlight or unhighlight sections of a tax lot, which is a polygon. So just keep in mind that, where this boundary is, nothing outside of it is eligible. But I would say like in Hot Creek Hills, this is very one-dimensional as well. So it doesn't take into account topography and different things, right? So when you have some of these highlighted properties, and I will go to South Beach, because that's really where quite a few of them are, down with the, lower lots in the Proposal Rock area, there's a couple. And then of course, up through here, you start seeing quite a few highlighted. But the reality is because of the ocean bluff and the drop, the properties are bigger in size than they are in reality, right? So some of this is also some ground truthing, but if we just really wanted to look at what's available that's vacant. So this is it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have her run this one more time. And Guy, I'm gonna ask her to make sure we got all of the residential property class values. And for highest and best use, because I want to see if it pulls these in. And see if there's any changes. So that's So that's the first part. So then with all of these highlighted pieces, what does this look like in numbers? Right? So can you guys see my sheet? I just switched it over.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cool.
Then what I did is I went through and I counted
Oh, geez, Sarah.
less than 5,000, 5,000 to 7,500 and over 7,500. And I separated those by sub area in the community. So South Beach, the Village, Hawk Street and Neskowin North. So anything that was north of the Village, all went up to Neskowin North. Neskowin Crest, there was, what was with that? Neff and Ocean Creek, I put together, and then just the Hawk Creek area in general. So you can see the number of vacant tax lots on that map as they count in each of these sub areas. So in the Village, and don't worry about the color, that was my coloring, but in the Village, there are 7 vacant tax lots that are less than 5,000 square feet. There's 12 that are between 5,000 and 7,500, and only 6 that are over 7,500. And I think a couple of those are the common areas for the condos.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't think there's actually 6. South Beach.
And then,
over-
Sarah, you would have to remove, if we're talking about maybe another column, would be those within the coastal hazard overlay zone.
That's right. I didn't count any of those guys. You're correct.
So, well, oh, you didn't count them. So you did.
Oh, no, excuse me. I did not factor that in. So you are
Okay.
correct. Some of these numbers will be reduced.
Right.
So, yeah, Hot Creek Hills has 24 vacant parcels over 7,500 square feet. Neskowin Crest, so that's that big area you saw that correlating on the map. We saw a lot of shaded properties there. So they have 40 over 7,500 square feet. And then Hawk Street and Neskowin North, they have 12 over 7,500 square feet, but a lot of those are the properties that also have oceanfront setback lines and different things that apply because of the dunes. And then the Village, that was pretty self-explanatory, and that includes everything from Proposal Rock up to where Hawk starts the straight stretch. And then where there's no more street intersections. And then South Beach is everything where if you got to go through the gate and across the creek, that's all South Beach. So that's my work so far.
thank
That's
you.
terrific.
Ooh.
I can't believe he handed this, but the streets, the lot, some of the lots along Hawk going out to North Neskowin are like 600 feet deep
That's right.
because of when they added that beach grass, it increased the size of the lots. I guess, I don't know, whatever it was, but can those lots be subdivided? I know that there's once you get closer to, to the foredune, there's going to be restrictions and you'll be in a high velocity area, but I'm wondering is there room for if I wanted to divide my lot, could I come up with developable
And
property?
that's all septic tank area too.
Right. And so I would say the answer is, so we're talking really about these lots right here. Here's
Yeah.
Neskowin North.
Yeah.
The answer is it depends. And it depends on a couple of things. One, you have the oceanfront setback line there
Yeah.
that determines where structures can go.
Right.
The septic is part of it, but also the lots are deep, but some of them are still relatively narrow. So you have easement assignments. Each lot has to
Mhm.
have 25 feet abutting the street or private way. So
Yeah.
even if you pull an easement, like you stack two lots east-west and you have an easement that accesses the west lot,
Yeah,
you still may have some challenges because you may not meet all the dimensional requirements for fronting and abutting and getting the easement and setbacks and lot coverage to put a structure on.
yeah,
So everything starts shrinking pretty quickly when you have to start checking all the boxes of what's required.
yeah,
The other factor, not specifically to the lot you're referencing, Guy, but I'm conscious of this from having watched the news this morning is I think we are going to hear some federal rulemaking on housing in disaster zones. So that's all tsunami zone right there. And one of the things they're talking about, they're going to have to do a better job of is figuring out for climate change, where are the high risk areas and how much are we going to build there, because we're losing our ability to help people recover their houses once they're gone. And that's all driven by the fire. But Oregon doesn't just have wildfire issues. Oregon has the tsunami zones, and it'll just be interesting to me how that unfolds, because given that we're probably going to bankrupt a few insurance companies with California, and they're already talking about, can we wake up and pay attention to the future, which I think is long
Overdue.
overdue.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. No, I don't know that it'll happen, but it's interesting. It's more than I've heard about it since the last round of California wildfires.
yeah.
Well, it also might bring into question if they'll replace a primary residence, but they're not gonna
Right.
pay to replace vacation homes.
Right. Or they won't insure vacation homes. But the other thing
Right.
is they need to insure, one of the biggest impacts that they're talking about in Altadena is you're talking about insurance for people who are already on that California program, which doesn't allow them to rebuild their house. It's emergency property insurance. And so, that's the other thing is that has a quadrupled impact on people at working wages. They can't get anywhere. They don't have a bank account of savings to build another house. So anyway, we don't need to get. Don't want to sidetrack, but the issue is coming to the fore, and I think as Oregon will be affected by it. I'm sure it's at a minimum by our insurance rates, but probably in other ways as well.
Well, it's partly why I think people were receptive to the coastal hazard overlay zone and
Yep.
some of the restrictions that are in that. So Neskowin does have some restrictions. Hey, Sarah, stay right there. Sunbow, if you go across from Edelman Way, it's on the east side of 101 there, and Sunbow has some lots, but rumor has it anyways that the person who owns all that undeveloped property is considering coming forth with a plat that has about 15 plus lots up there.
Okay.
And it's we don't show it. Let's see. We don't show it. The empty areas up there don't come up as being shown as empty.
No, they do not, because Guy, that is the side that I was talking about with all of those highest and best use and tax deferrals. I have to pull them by hand because
Yeah.
I can't pull them using GIS because it's tied to the assessor's database. And that's what's tripping me up.
Yeah.
But in terms of interest in development of properties on this side, so what you're talking about is right in here.
Yes.
Yeah, and even you're right. As you go further, just a shade north. So you see where Sunbow Road comes up, you can see the road.
Yeah, right here.
No.
That's this is Sorrel and this is Sunbow.
Yeah. But if you go down, so that all that area inside the community boundary, yeah,
Mhm.
is developable.
Yes, and we get interest. Our office, every once in a while, somebody reaches out to us wanting to have a meeting to talk about, the process for developing that area. But I haven't seen anything serious come in yet.
Yeah, and the reason why, because we've been talking to that property owner about the bridge and going over Butte Creek to enter into Sunbow. And we've got an assessment of that bridge. It's not going to last. Watershed Council wants to replace it, and we're working with the owner and all the owners up there, but the major owner as well.
Mhm.
Anyway, it's an interesting thing about in terms of property that could be developed and really have a lot of good housing on it. I mean, that's one of the areas in the Neskowin community that could really be developed
Yeah,
out of these clusters.
I agree. I think that this is one of the ideal areas. And they'll have to go through a process. you know.
Yeah, right.
But that's where, in talking to Chris Kiola about septic, yeah, it's very possible here.
Yeah,
Definitely
exactly.
feasible for systems for middle housing that we could permit locally. I mean, someone could go to DEQ if they wanted to put in a community wastewater treatment system like Sahali.
Yeah.
That's something that's allowed here too, but part of our conversation internally in the department has been, if we want to keep this local and middle housing, let's talk about, are these processes where the permits can also remain local, where state permitting is not required, and for things like septic systems, and we feel yes that it can be.
So this is where, one of the questions that on our agenda is about what can we actually alter. And of course, when you're talking about properties that like this, I mean, you start talking about property rights and the rights of the owner. And and maybe in an ideal world, you could say, you're going to have to, here's the density that you have to have for this area. You could do that. But the fact is that their property right is that they could subdivide that and turns into a much more lucrative kind of development. I'm not sure. But anyways, it's one of the things we can't alter, we can't take away is somebody's right to develop their property within the zone that it's in, and within other just general restrictions. Like if this person wanted to come up with 16 more lots, like you said, they're going to have to come up with a plat and go through all the things that you would have to do to have that approved. But yeah, it's we can't, I kind of look at the village and what is it, Independence Ranch? What's
I
Lori?
know, that it's Corvallis runs at the top.
Yeah, but so next door to Lori, I wish Lori were on here. You build, you get two lots together and build a huge house.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And, we can't change that. We can't
That's
limit
right.
that. That's the person's right to build as big a house as they want within the general restrictions they have for building on a R1 lot. But in an ideal world, that could have been something different. I mean, the housing could have been really different.
Well, we're at least in the middle housing thing, it's a proposal to consider other options. And the more we can make clear how those options can be designed and keep in character with the original idea of the village, that at least that's sentiment that can be passed forward to people who are developing, is to keep it in character or look enough at these models to have them be attractive, depending on what we think is attractive, but these are maybe different thoughts than they had thought of previously.
Yeah.
So and let's
Well-
talk about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to say the other thing that's going on in Neskowin, which I think is really interesting, is you've got, and I don't know about that house. I don't know if it falls into this category, but it has a lot to do with access. So you have people now adding pieces to their house so that 2 or 3 families can use the house instead of 1, right? And so, and we don't know about that house. There may be 3 families there, and so that actually that none of them could do it by themselves. But they're, I mean, I just don't know. But I've seen it. We've got one down the street from us where there's this little, they just added a little house, and they've doubled or tripled the number of not people there at one time, but the number of people who have access to use the house. So I just think that's. It'll be interesting to see how this all emerges, and it still remains to be seen that someone can buy a lot in the village at current market prices and make an economic return on cluster housing. I mean, that's the thing that we definitely don't control.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting. But Sarah, we've never been clearer than today on what this looks like. And so I just want to thank you for that, because, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And this really helps us, will be a tremendous communication tool with the community.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
So I have 2 more things with that, and then I have a question for you.
Okay.
So let's talk about the overlay zone and how that,
Yeah.
the relationship of that. Okay. So if you recall, the R3 zone does not have the density limitations,
Right.
right? It's the R1. Okay. So these 2 lots right here are in the R3 zone.
Right.
Okay. So now, so these 2 lots are capable of middle housing development, because the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone only applies to R1 zone properties. Okay. And we're talking about this in terms of density limits. So let's
Okay.
talk about the R1 or the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone in terms of the village. So to describe the easterly boundary of that overlay zone, it's basically covers 1 lot east of breakers. So see where my hand is? If I took my hand, basically everything, these lots and everything west of it are in the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone,
Oh,
including this lot, and this lot.
okay.
Okay. So if we take those out, let me check this one at the top here. For density purposes, we are removing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 total lots out of the shaded lots of the village, who just simply by the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone can still build, but the density is not there.
Hmm.
So
And that's, Off Beach might even be more.
right. So when we go to in the village, so I said 11, right?
Mhm.
So what we have in the village is 25 lots total that are vacant, if you go across my column.
Yeah.
If we remove those 11, that leaves us
14.
actually with 14.
Yeah. Go down to South Beach.
Mhm. So
which-
I always talk about the fear of the quadplex ferry, right?
Yeah.
Just to be candid. So when we look at the fear of the quadplex ferry in terms of the village, because that's a real fear people have, they don't want their character changing. And I understand that. But when we look at the fear of the ferry in the village, what are we really looking at? And I think that the table and the map really help put that into perspective, especially because who's going to tear down a perfectly good $1 million home to rebuild it with a quadplex or a triplex? And based on those numbers and the minimum lot size for a quadplex or a triplex, can they actually do it anyway? Right, so the facts start coming in. Okay, so let's
So-
start at the proposal rock area, and I'm gonna pull my Neskowin map down, because that's what you want to know about, right, Guy?
Yeah, but there's not as many as I thought it would be.
So
Yeah.
in here, this lot is in the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone, and this lot is in the Neskowin Coastal Hazards
Yeah.
Overlay Zone. These lots, something that's important to remember, have a 50-foot setback from the creek.
Yeah.
Means we have to do a riparian exception, and there's all other things that go with that, right?
Which makes me think too, Sarah, about the FEMA wetlands thing,
Mhm.
is even if you go up to back to the village,
Right.
is what are restrictions?
I think so. The majority, like, of these lots, so this one is a long lot, right? So this part would not be eligible for density. This part would.
Yeah.
Most of these interior lots that are kind of safely sandwiched in the middle are outside of the areas of special flood hazard.
So you got 180 feet from the creek?
But it's only to the map boundary of the area of special flood hazard,
Yeah.
which, if this is Hawk Street, as it comes, and then it goes down this way,
Mhm.
it follows the fringes because the topography along Hawk Street actually in a lot of places accelerates, increases pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So so these properties are on some of these properties along Hawk on the west side are mapped. But when you get into this middle area where we're seeing these vacant parcels, most
Mhm.
of them are out of the flood area too. In fact, I would venture to say all of them.
So in general, Sarah, if a house is within the special flood area, if the lot is within that, what restrictions would there be building?
So we did not pick one of the three pick'ems, as you are aware. We came up with a.
Right.
six-foot
Right. Yeah.
So it would be standard elevation to
Okay.
minimize flood risk. And so then in terms, those are good questions, Guy. So then in terms of, so this is where we have a lot of these lots, right?
So that's where the quadplex ferries are gonna land, huh?
Potentially, I think they're all gonna land east of the highway, but we won't say anything. Wanna worry people too much. Okay. All of are developed, but they are in. Let's see. Half of this property is in. Half of it is out, so there may be an opportunity on the eastern region of this property for middle housing.
I think that's right along Sutton Creek too, which will be in the flood hazard.
Right,
Yeah.
but because we did not pick one of those three.
I know. Right now we're
Right
good.
Right now, we're good. Right now, we're good. That's right. Okay. So these, let's see. So, where am I at here? Okay. Most of these, it looks like these are all okay. Over in here, what's going to determine density is going to be topography. Topography, and I would say access. Moving up. I'm going to, let me see if I can pop this over and you guys can see it. Because we have an idea, we have the visual of the map. So can you guys see this?
Oh, look at
Yeah.
this.
So this is the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone.
Yeah,
Oh, excellent, excellent. I was gonna ask for that.
Yeah.
that's terrific.
So, it's not, let me turn off the zoning layer because we know this is all R1. So you can just get a better look. So mostly what the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay Zone does in that upper area of South Beach, which is the south area, is it bisects properties. These properties that are wholly within are actually all developed. These couple of properties, we've done a couple of variances, if you recall, because some of these try to hug the road and avoid the slope.
Mhm.
And then you can see here where it is. So I would say the majority of the properties so far without the Neskowin are our information. Where we see the most development potential just based purely on vacant properties is South Beach. But anecdotally, I think we all know that the reality is that there's some pretty extreme topography in this area.
Yep.
It is highly likely we are not going to see increased density through here in terms of middle housing. I think we will still continue to see a lot of single family dwellings and maybe a duplex tucked in here and there, which currently already exist in the South Beach area anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
But I don't foresee, just simply because of topography. And again, you take a lot that's got a steep slope, you have setbacks, you have lot coverage requirements, all these things start factoring in, and pretty soon, you've got, your property isn't so big anymore. Because the developable area is what we're actually talking about. So, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and minimize that, and I'm gonna go back to this map. So as I'm gonna go ahead and continue to refine this, I gotta find a way to pull in the ours properties over here on the east side. What am I missing?
Well, so one of the questions I would have, Sarah, is I don't know if it's possible, and there's elegant simplicity to this map that will be wholly welcomed by people coming into the process to help us complete the plan. And I really like that. I didn't know, I would not like to add a lot because I think it's so easy to read. The only question, given Guy's discussion, is whether you could just redline the coastal zone management area,
Yeah.
because everyone's familiar with that. And the other thing that I don't know, and I don't want to create a problem where there isn't one, but I've just heard so much about the short-term rental stuff. Should we just leave that aside from this? Is there any reason people need to know where the short-term rentals are in this map just for are they going to ask that in these meetings? I have no read on that because I just haven't followed that issue at all.
Well, I think you raise a good point, because people's mind, that's where they go next, is we're gonna get housing on the ground, and it's not gonna go to workforce, it's going to go to rentals. Which I think is a valid concern, and there's parameters that we have put in and checkpoints into the STR program to mitigate that. I think for purposes of what we are talking about is we're talking about vacant properties. And with the short-term rental program, you have to have a certificate of occupancy to even be eligible to apply. So, that all of that being said, one thing that I am working on with the GIS contractor that you haven't seen yet is a live layer that will go into the public GIS program to where you can turn that layer on and see where all of the rentals are.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's coming. That's a different project I got, but
Okay.
basically,
Well, then let's leave it off this project, because I think it just opens a door that is not germane to what we're immediately trying to get done.
And ultimately, it's going to highlight other properties, Lynn. Right, it's gonna highlight, so we're just gonna add more color to our map that may confuse. But what I would love for them to be able to do is hold this map or look at it on one screen and pull up that GIS layer of
Yeah.
licensed properties on the other and do their own comparison. So, and we're not too far away from that. I think by the time we start going back and really talking to the community about all of this, I should have that live.
Great.
So, yeah.
Very
Okay,
good.
so leave the map as it is, add the coastal hazards overlay zone. I'm gonna run through my table one more time, and maybe what I'll do is instead of coloring the RR properties on this map, I might just put the properties in the table. What do you guys think about that?
Yep.
In the table,
Color.
okay.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would add another line here for Neskowin RR
Yep.
and then add to these numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that
Or you mean
addresses,
another column?
Yeah,
yeah,
And then
because
you're gonna add it, you're also gonna add a column of the
hazard zone,
hazard. Yeah,
I think what I'll do is I'm gonna add the hazard zone layer
In the
to our
map.
map, pull them out and unshade them, Guy,
Hmm,
because whether they're vacant or not, it doesn't matter. Right,
Mhm.
because I think what we want to give people is the picture of where is this possible.
yeah, as long as we make that clear on
Yep.
what the map represents, yeah.
Yep, so I'll add that layer and then I will subtract like in the village. I'm gonna take 11 off of this line in different places. Because I'll have this table correlate with that map that will include the overlay zone. Because that
Mhm.
means I might peel a couple off of the South Beach
South Beach.
area as well.
So if you want to look up those two properties that I
Yep.
said we own that didn't come up in your thing, just
Yeah,
look up the they're all under Donna Joe's trust.
Yep, I've got them right in front of me on my
Okay,
other screen.
okay,
Donna and Brenda is who I show them with. And yeah,
yeah,
I'm showing that property class data value that actually should have pulled them. So I'm gonna go back and ask my GIS
Okay.
contractor if we can do this again.
okay.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank
Okay.
you.
absolutely. No, so happy to share. And then when I get these cleaned up, then I will send them to Randall for disbursement to the group. And then we'll put these in our pile of things ready to present to the community. 'Cause I
Oh,
think-
and let's put the Neskowin Horse Trail back on the map too, where all the horses used to go down by the golf course onto the beach and then, no, I'm just kidding.
And walk through the streets. What street did they go up?
Right in front of the golf course.
That's funny.
And then they went
Good.
up the street with the really steep hill, and that was the trick. If you fell off your horse there, you weren't
Yeah.
going to be able to continue to the beach, but
That was the test.
didn't happen a lot.
If you're worthy enough to make it to the beach because you don't fall off your horse, that's your reward.
That's your reward.
Nice. That or it was endless shame of
Yeah.
being the one always remembered as falling off.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll clean that up. And
Right.
I'm gonna try to have that ready by our next meeting. The work that Tom and I are doing, because we're trying to run the other work at the same time, we might come back to this in 2 meetings, just trying to prioritize if that's okay with everyone.
Yes,
Good, excellent progress.
yes,
And you guys are working on the 406
Yeah.
language separately.
Yep.
So we can understand that.
So I did, so maybe since we have some time left, Tom, I could just give a couple of teasers. to
Okay,
the stuff that you and I talked about today. Met with the planning consultant team. And was able to get some clarity on a couple of things that you're going to see on this table and the work that Tom and I are going to turn back around. Okay, so let's start with lot size, because that was something we talked a lot about, because I'm hoping like what Tom and I, what our goal is to take as many things off the table as we can so that there's clear and concise direction of what we're working on in these areas moving forward. Okay.
And Sarah, for the purpose of the minutes, can you tell me the name of the consulting team?
It's 3J and Jet Planning. So there's two, there's 4 total, but for purposes of Neskowin, it's 3J and Jet.
And
Planning.
you said jet, like airplane jet? Jet
Yep.
planning. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, yes, okay. So the legislation that was passed does not require a jurisdiction to change their minimum lot size requirements. The minimum lot size requirements remain relevant. So for instance, in the Neskowin R1 zone,
7,500.
not have, right, I was thinking of you guys, I was there, I was answering all those questions, or I was asking all those questions for you. We do not have to change the minimum lot size, lot width, and depth requirements, which is awesome news for all of us.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So that's
But-
gonna read exactly how it does.
But Sarah, we also said if it's eligible to build a house, even though we've got all these 5,000 square foot and less lots in the village, especially, they still can support a single family home or they support a home, a development.
Correct.
So even though our standard is 7,500 square feet, we already allow homes on 5,000 square feet. So it shouldn't make a difference.
That are lots of record. You're right. Okay, so here's where it makes the difference. Okay, so I'm gonna splice this up into two pieces. And we might have to think about this. This might take some processing. So if it doesn't make
On my
sense-
part.
No, on everybody's part. If you gotta let this sink in and simmer, Tom and I are gonna come back in 2 weeks and it's all gonna make sense.
All right, good.
Just
Yeah.
kind of planting the idea seeds. Okay. So in the R1 zone and in the RR zone and the R3 zone, punchline is we don't have to change those standards for lot size, lot width, and lot depth. Okay. They still apply, and they apply in 2 areas. They apply for land divisions. So to create new parcels, so if you have a parent property, a parent lot, you can create child lots, right? They all have to meet those, whatever the minimum lot size requirement of the zone with those dimensions, they still have to meet it. Okay. The only exception to that is for townhomes, but we'll get to that later. Okay. For that minimum lot size or lots of record that are less than 7,500 square feet, you have to still allow a single family dwelling or a duplex. Because those are basically like, where I'm going is, those are one and the same. For purposes of lot size, etc. A single family dwelling and a duplex, they're one and the same. They both can go on a lot of record that is less than 7,500 square feet, or for new properties created, child lots, 7,500 square feet, that's your size. Okay, here's where it gets a little backwards for me, but this is the way the legislation reads. Where we have to be clear and where there will be a change following legislation. For a triplex, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. And for a quadplex, the minimum lot size requirement is 7,000 square feet. So in the structure of the zoning, we're going to keep the 7,500 square feet. We're going to keep the minimum lot width and depth requirements. What I think is backwards about this is that basically that will always be the benchmark unless it's a lot of record for a single family dwelling or a duplex. So basically you have to have a larger minimum lot size for a single family dwelling or a duplex than you do for a triplex or a fourplex.
Which does
That
not
means-
seem to make sense, but
And it could be just because we're starting out with larger minimum property size requirements, but I think what's relevant is for a single family dwelling or a duplex on new lots created that are not lots of record, they will have to be at least 7,500 square feet or larger. The reality of putting a triplex on a 5,000 square foot lot is incredibly slim. By the time you look at setbacks, lot coverage, etc. You know, that again, think about the village properties or some of those other areas. You know, there's not a lot of room. You've got access, etc. So I'm actually not as worried about that 5,000 square foot threshold for a triplex or the 7,000 square foot threshold for a fourplex. I think what we are going to see is really viable projects on anything that's 7,500 square feet or greater, just simply because of the setbacks and those other parameters that are in place. Your setbacks as they exist today, we can keep,
Yay.
right? So that's what Tom and I are going to do is we're going to say all this stuff is still relevant. All this stuff can be kept. There's no change here, but we're going to add in that 5,000 square feet. We're going to add in the 7,000. The other thing that I thought was, so one of the other questions is I was visiting with the consulting team and there were some planners from the city on the call as well. And I said, okay, I said, I feel stupid asking this, but I told them, I said, I want a good answer for communities because I don't feel like I have a good answer. And I said, what is the difference between a condo and a townhome? Everybody was like, oh my gosh, yeah, please, what is a good answer for that? Because we were all trying to figure out how to do that. And here's the answer, just very simply. If it's a townhome, you own the dirt. If it's a condo, you don't. Some condos are multi-story, right? So you can't visualize a condo being only what you see at like Proposal Rock. Because they're not all stacked boxes, multi-story, and you just own your own little box that's connected to others. A condo can be a multi-story, something that on the outside you would normally associate as a townhome. So that's the difference. Condos, you don't own the dirt. Townhome, you own the dirt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we go back and start looking at that. The other thing that I thought was interesting that we talked about was we talked about townhomes in terms of just kind of a teaser for design standards. You can require a garage for a townhome because parking is a big deal, right? So if we have a 20-foot setback already, and everybody's concerned about only asking for one parking space, but we can require townhomes to have a garage if we allow them to go up to 35 feet. Your zoning codes already allow for structures to go up to 35 feet. So when we start thinking about, you know, what matters, parking is a big thing. There might be some ways to incorporate some design standards that actually fit within the framework of the regulations and maximum allowable building heights you already have. And that way, if you have a garage, you have a front yard setback, chances are they're gonna pour a driveway and stuff in front of that too. And then now you end up with 2 spaces. One thing I was talking to Tom about is the parking requirements for things like townhomes and multifamily dwellings already, as it's adopted today, is 2 for the first unit, but only 1 for every unit thereafter. Right? And so I think that having that knowledge of, we already allow for 35 feet. Maybe we incentivize that parking with that garage element that essentially we could require, because we're already allowing structures up to 35 feet, which may foster more parking. The other thing that we talked about that was interesting was we talked about condos. There is no definition of a single story. It's not defined.
It's not what?
It's not
Defined.
defined.
Of single story?
Mm-mm. So in doing some building code research and looking at different structures and allowable heights, my recommendation for cottage clusters is that we go about 18 feet. Single story allows for a nice pitched roof. So start thinking about that. Just another little seed to plant. With that, if we can keep them at 900 square feet. To confirm there's no minimum that is prescribed through state law through this middle housing code. If we want to require additional parking, we would have to allow cottage clusters to go up to 1,000 square feet. And at 1,000 square feet though, they have to be 2 stories, which would be 25 feet. So something to start thinking about, and I'm gonna get this straight in my head before I come back. But this is where, these are some of the trade-offs where we get to start picking and choosing. So these are things I want you guys to start thinking about and noodling on as Tom and I put these documents together.
And
Yes.
what's the rationale behind that?
I think if they are 1,000 square feet or greater, it may be that there's that vertical incentive to go up to preserve open space or to allow more cottages versus keeping them single story and with essentially a bigger building footprint.
Is there a minimum lot size for a cottage cluster?
So it is the minimum property size requirement of the zone. We actually, for a cottage cluster, have to allow the potential for up to 8. But all of that again will be predetermined by the property size. Because
So
you're
if
not.
I have so if I have a 5,000 square foot lot and I have one house on it now and I tear it down,
Mhm.
now I want to build 4 cottages, I can't do that because
You
I
may
don't-
not have enough room.
I don't have 7,500. No, I don't meet. All of a sudden, if I want to start a new thing again, I don't have 7,500 square feet.
Right, so for a cottage cluster, the minimum property size is 7,000. So we're gonna give you that table to clean it up, right? Because the
Okay.
7,500 is for, again, it'd be new lots for single family dwellings and duplexes, and then we gotta ratchet it down for this other stuff. So,
So the location matters. So if you're going to have 2-story cottage clusters next to you versus a parking problem, it depends on what the architecture is on either side. Because some people may say, well, I'll give you a parking place and make it 1 story.
right, so we could, without getting it overly complicated, we could do an if then. So you could go up to 1,000 square feet, have 2 stories. We have to then define what 2 stories is. Right, and it might be 25 feet. We have to define that. and say, you can do this and go 2 stories, but you have to do parking. Right? So I think that's where we have to think about is just start thinking in terms of, I don't like to use the term horse trading, but there might be some design incentives that we do want to think about. Excuse me, or not. But again, I think thinking about the map, kind of seeing now realistically, what does the village look like? What does South Beach look like? What does, Neskowin Crest in that area look like? Is this something that we potentially think we're going to see the most of east of the highway? So then does it matter if they're 2 stores or not? Right? Would we allow up to 1,000 square feet? So these are the things I think just to prepare us for those conversations as Tom and I do our work and come back in 2 weeks, just to start thinking about.
Right, we have to think both what we don't want to see and what seems reasonable, given the location of where most of them will end up. And if it's more flexible because of being east of the highway and it's on a slope and it's very different context.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
But
Or
the,
what we do is the cottage cluster requirements for the R1 zone deviate slightly from the RR zone. But going back, think about the map in terms of, we do have RR zone property. I'm thinking specifically of the golf course or Hot Creek Hills on the east side. So I'm not sure how we would parse that apart, but it's something we can talk about.
Right.
so does the state or do the planning consultants have any comments on the fact that townhouses, because you own the dirt, have a greater capacity to build intergenerational wealth, which is part of the housing problem that we have right now, than condominiums? I mean, one of the things that's scary to me about condominiums is you have a lot of lack of control factors. You have a devastated insurance market right now, and you have people who are income constrained with HOAs, et cetera, that may be beyond their control. So a townhouse really, a lot of those people in Pacific Palisades, for example, keep talking about, this was my dad's house and he left us. And it's what they say makes Pacific Palisades an affordable community, is because the people there were able to inherit their parents' homes and build equity, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, the condo thing for affordable housing is a little questionable.
Oh, agreed. And I think that you're going to see, as we start diving into the options, they really tried to incentivize and make it easier to do a townhome than a condo for all of those reasons you've just said. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think, Tom, did I miss anything? I think those are probably the germane updates to get everybody prepared for what we'll have next week.
Yeah, I think you didn't cover the things that we went sidetrack on, but other than that. Yeah, I think you. So we will have some modifications to the cottage cluster. So I don't know how useful it's going to be to go through the design things, but maybe it'll bring up something that we can stick a pin in and come back to later. We've got, what, about a half an hour yet? Fran?
Yeah.
So, did you have anything more, Sarah? Because that's all I remember we covered.
Yeah, no, I think that's my best for today.
That's a lot. Well, that's
And
great.
my eyes, I'm sorry if I look like my face, my eyes are watering and I don't know why. So if you see me wiping my eyes, I am not crying. My eyes are just watering right now.
Are you allergic to us, Sarah?
Never, no. And even if I was, I'd come around anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Well, by the way, did anyone Lynn indicated she was going to look at the Mark Lakeman cottage cluster things. I don't know if anyone else looked at them to pick up any pointers from his his perspective that he presents.
You know, at your double recommendation to me, and I did watch the video, and I understand he's on a tour of some, lack of a better term, cottage clusters in Portland. But it really started generating some thoughts and ideas about how we form community especially in the village, and it could be in South Beach too. And you know, I meant to start writing down some thoughts and ideas about it, but I think we ought to, maybe I'll make sure everybody sees the video and think about how would this apply, you know, to Neskowin, not so much in terms of, you know, where the pieces are going to be, but how community can be built through structures and places and my brain started going off on that. I appreciate that's a really good, you know, video, really great perspective. So I started thinking, I've got my paint bucket out, I'm going to paint the streets. Right.
Well, intersections could be more interesting as they were piazzas and a place to gather than just a hazardous intersection that you evade. But
I mean, the thought about, and Sarah, I don't apologize if you've not seen the video.
Mark Lakeman things about generative communities.
But his point about, you know, streets as primarily built there for cars wasn't a thing until the 20s. Streets were there for people to gather in. They were for kids to play, for communities to kind of come together. And so it got me thinking about what would that look like in Neskowin to limit.
We already have that in Neskowin.
Well,
I mean, because we have skinny streets and because we give
that helps.
to bicycles and walking, I see things going on all the time in the streets of the village, because it's not like you can zoom down and get where you're going driving to, you just, you know, I think we've achieved some of these things.
I think so too, Lynn. I started thinking, like, right away, my brain went to limiting, you know, all this, like, especially in the village, making streets one way so you don't have cars going back and forth on the street. Anyway, it's just some thoughts about how to even create more community in the streets. Anyways, just thoughts. Good.
Thank you,
video.
Guy.
Yeah, good video.
Lynn, any thoughts, or was it too woo-woo?
Wait, are you defining me as a non-woo-woo person?
No, but I never know what people are going to take away from that.
The thing I took away from it is I've seen the good and the bad of it in Portland, and I've seen, like, one of the things when I said the painted streets, we have a painted street near us which people are trying to get asphalted over because they painted it like 30 years ago and no one's painted it since, and now it just looks like confusing to people who are driving or riding their bikes. But I also think, again, I think Neskowin, part of its charm is that it captured some of those things early on. So I always refer to the cottage cluster we have by Casey Joyce, which doesn't meet any of the, I mean, it's more compact than anything. And those people in that community, and some of them trade in and out, you know, the houses sell over time, the cottages sell over time, but it's been there now forever, and they have gotten along forever. And it's one of the things people most often talked about who've never been to Neskowin before. They say, what's that little area with the lady with the flowers and stuff? And I just think if we can, the single story thing, which I think it's Tom who keeps coming back to the power of single story. I think that is that, and understanding that 900 square feet is a lot of square footage. Lots of people live in 700 or 800 in Portland. And just kind of building on what he said about getting more community, but at the same time, capturing the things we've already done right and making sure they continue to happen. I have to say, I'm heavily influenced by the governor announcing herself 2 weeks ago or a week ago that we're not anywhere near our goals. We've had a housing crisis for 20 years, and we're not even in our first year goal. We didn't even meet by 25%. I mean, the thing I'm always come back to is Oregon has made it so challenging that the process is so slow, that we have to be mindful of that, because there are people who need housing. We're going to start feeling that pressure even more with what's happening in LA, because Oregon's largest in-migration population is from California. So I thought I really appreciate you sharing it, and I thought he had lots of great ideas. I just think we have to balance all the factors here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I understand it's a city and we're talking about a place that's already a village. So
Yes.
the intellectual points that he's making that I thought were salient, and then how do we adapt to respond to those points made in our own way. And Mark said he's more than willing to come walk through the village with us and go like, well, here's an opportunity and here's what you could do. But I hadn't gotten much feedback, so I wasn't. I said I can't take a next step till I hear from people.
Well,
Yeah,
I also think that map that Sarah did today, I think in terms of public process, I think he would be a great person to come back when we have a developer on the hook who's going to build the housing. Because what I wouldn't want to do is have him go through with existing property owners who haven't seen the map and don't know what's going on, and them saying, please don't even look at my property and please get off my property right now. I mean, I think it's a sensitive issue, and I think if we use our tools that we've seen today successfully, we may be calling him in the future.
right. Yeah.
Sarah is reading this story a week or so ago about and I think it's New York State is trying to look at laws that would prevent investment companies from buying properties, homes. And as part of their housing concerns that housing homes have become like a stock now. You know,
Yes.
like it's an investment commodity. And the prices, of course, being driven, you know, by, I mean, people doing exactly what, like Lynn says, you've got the supply and demand. The supply is so low, demand is so high, so investment companies are looking at this as an opportunity to make money by owning, you know, and buying up just large tracts of homes, and then just, you know, and renting them. They're not selling them for ownership. I mean,
Right.
they're buying them because they're worth so much, and so the rents keep going up. Anyway, so New York is considering passing this law to prevent that. But
That's
are
interesting.
you seeing that at all in Tillamook County, that housing has become a commodity to be invested in, and you've got groups purchasing large amounts of
Yeah,
homes?
that's a great question, Guy. I don't see that, but what I see, and this is all anecdotally, and we're working on our housing needs assessment update and all this stuff. So that's all going to get refreshed. And I'm curious to see what the actual data is. But what I can tell you, what I have seen is I'm seeing people who have a tenant move out, who the rent was affordable, but due to economics and supply and demand, you know, I've literally heard, oh my God, I had no idea I could get somebody be willing to pay $2,000 a month for my place, but they are so great. I'm taking it, you know, because it's human nature. And I think the story for our county is people are charging what they can and have hit the ceiling for what people are willing to pay. But it literally is coming at a cost to those renters because they cannot afford anything else.
Right.
You know, there's no more affordability. The term of affordability is in relation to whatever your mortgage or rent or whatever it is. It should be no more than a third of your income. So it's a scale of proportionality, right? So you make, you know, $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year, your affordable, what is defined as affordable for you is a third. And I think what we're seeing, because people are just simply willing to pay because they have to. Folks who have owned properties for a long time or are buying a house are buying it just because they can rent it at such an astronomically high rate, and people are willing to pay for it because they're desperate. On the flip side of that, I've seen a few people get burned because with interest rates so high, especially those that had a construction loan that were trying to build rentals, now they're actually upside down and underwater because the interest rates have outpaced what people are willing to pay. So these homes can't even go online to rent if it's less than $3,000 a month, which I mean, it's past the point of I can scrape enough together and compromise my quality of life just to get a rental. So then I know several houses that are just simply sitting vacant because the person who owns them or the people who own them nobody's going to pay what needs to be paid just to simply cover the mortgage.
I mean, my hope is that the Habitat for Humanity Land Trust is, you know, they're the nature conservancy of the housing market. Essentially, they go in and they play with all the big people and they buy up land that makes sense. And I think, you know, we're going to have some of those opportunities. And I think it also is going to have, particularly in Oregon, manufactured housing is and has been for a very long time how people live that cannot afford to buy houses. And I think as long as we make manufactured housing an option for for the middle housing, which I think it is, that's going to be how it goes. And you know, you can say what you want about it, but it gets families into houses that they have an asset. At the end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of the purchase, they have an asset. And if they maintain the asset's depreciating every year, but it's not like this. It's like, you know, this, so they can, you know, have a reasonable housing. So, and I think based on your map, Sarah, we have some opportunity for manufactured housing to get to our 40 plus units.
Yes. And I would offer, there's a lot of land trusts because of the work that we are doing that are interested in Tillamook County. They know we're doing this work. These are great trusts and organizations. And, you know, I am hopeful that some of them will see something somewhere in our county and say, yeah, we want to try to make this work here. And some of those are local groups that have come together, you know, community members who want to see a trust. And then, yeah, in terms of the, you know, manufactured homes, I mean, just from like being involved in the building program, you're right. If they're maintained just like any other home, I mean, the requirements, even for modular and manufactured housing in the state of Oregon, we have some of the most robust building code requirements anywhere. So whatever is, if it gets stickered and certified in the state of Oregon, irrespective of the kind of designation it is, it's built.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah. I think that that's a good thing, you know, because it gets back to accessibility to clean, safe, and affordable housing. So, speaking of, so tomorrow, I don't know if you guys are busy or if you want to pop online, we have 8 presentations for this year's housing grant allocation for the Housing Production Solutions Fund. So this is what Kingfisher was the recipient of this, our first year we did it. So there are 8 proposals that are going before the Housing Commission for presentations tomorrow. If you just like to listen in and see who's knocking on our door for funding,
What time is it?
it's from 9 to 2, 9 to 3.
Okay.
So, and it'll be online. So the DCD home link or virtual meeting link, you can go to the Housing Commission page. They're gonna walk through all their presentations. We're gonna do 2 at a time. So there'll be 2 starting, then a quick break, and then 2 more, and then lunch for an hour, I think around noon, and then 2 more and a break, and then 2 more, and we'll wrap up. But it's just the presentations. But and there's nothing in Neskowin, but it would kind of give you could see the landscape of who's knocking on our door and what they want to do. And there's some pretty amazing people and companies that are trying to help us meet our housing needs.
Are the applications online in the Housing Commission page?
I think Parker was going to upload them, Guy. I'm not sure. They should be. I know he's working on the packets for commission members now, but you know, they've got, you know, they do nice presentations on their projects and stuff. I'm not sure if there's any in Pacific City this round either. I think they're all Tillamook and North, but there's some nice project proposals.
Yeah.
Yay, thank you for that. I may not be able to attend tomorrow, but I appreciate the mention. And if I can, I'm gonna hop on and watch. It'd be fascinating.
It's turned into my favorite day with the housing.
Yeah.
To be a part of
Results,
that
results.
from the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, to see who's coming, who wants to be here is pretty exciting. Yeah.
What zone, Sarah, do we have to have a convention, the Tillamook County Convention Center built in Neskowin rather than at the port? I mean, if this is going to be
Are you asking me to create a zone for you? I can.
we're going to have a convention center zone.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
man,
Sarah,
anyway,
is the 10 unit middle housing and special needs thing in Nehalem, is that on the dock yet or tomorrow?
That is one of our applicants, so we will be hearing a presentation about Sammy's Place tonight.
Yeah, Kevin told me about it last night, so it
Yeah.
sounded intriguing.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. Yeah, the variety of projects and who's spearheading them, and I think we have one that focuses on senior housing tomorrow too, if I recall. So yeah, it's pretty neat. And you know, there's only $400,000, so I'm not sure, you know, what that's gonna look like. But you know, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I just find it very inspiring to listen to what people are putting together to try to put something together that fits our communities. You know, that's what's really cool about it for me.
any
So
luck in getting system development fees waived?
Sometimes, so a couple of the applications, I believe they're asking for money to help pay the SDCs. And we've done that before. We've done pre-development awards or SDC money for SDCs.
Of course, it'd always be better if the districts themselves picked it up as
Right.
a community donation in a way.
Yes, but I think we are at a place with the commission to where they understand how important SDCs are, especially for smaller districts and municipalities. And the conversation has shifted away from waiving them to how could we get more money and use money to help pay them? Because it's understood that, you know, those are important for future operations. So that mindset is shifting, and I'm glad to see that, because it definitely feels more like a partnership of how do we support our districts as well.
Yeah.
In terms of the presentations, are they going to be on the Tillamook County YouTube channel?
They will end up being on the Housing Commission page. So if you go to the DCD or the county homepage and you click the Housing Commission page, the meetings are all uploaded there. So the meeting tomorrow, and it will probably be, because of the language, I have to chunk it up into a few parts.
But the reason I asked that is that page pointed me at YouTube.
Oh,
Yeah. I think, okay, so this is where my technological illiteracy is going to come shining through. Um, we record them in Microsoft Teams. And then I believe they get downloaded and uploaded in an MP3 format.
Yeah,
I don't know, I have people that do this for me that are a lot smarter than I am when it comes to this. So I think theoretically, you should be able to download the meeting, or you could probably search and find it on YouTube later if it just pops up there anyway.
I can show you what the page now says. It looks like they've just started doing that.
That could be.
Because that's where it says, follow this link to recordings of past meetings.
There you go. Parker's already cleaned it up.
And there's not very many. So I think they've just started doing it.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. So part of this that is one of my not so good things with my staff is because for whatever reason, all of the meeting recordings come to me and then I have to download and give them to staff, and it drives them crazy because they can't just go on and pull them themselves. And we don't know why I'm the only one that has permission. So Tom, yeah, I thank you for telling me that, because that gives me a heads up that Parker is probably going to be like, hey, I need my other meetings. So we'll see.
I put the link to the Tillamook County YouTube in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can see that he got that from the Housing Commission page.
Mhm.
Yep.
So, and I'll have to tell you, Dave Bennett has been an incredible asset to the Housing Commission and the Finance Committee with his finance background when they're looking at these grant applications and the performas. You know, he's just remarkable, and he's one of those, I don't know how he's talented at financing, but he definitely is. He has that talent. And
Cool.
we're very lucky to have him for sure.
Okay. So with all that, were we going to try to go back to the document, or are we going to say that's enough for today, or how do you feel?
Well, I think it's going to change somewhat based on the new information. So
Yeah.
it probably makes sense for me to go back and redo what was already been done and then continue. So I think that's what's going to make sense. Because
Okay,
there's going to be some things that have already decided that we thought were questions.
And
right.
So-
There were those
Yeah.
red questions here and
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So Ran, one of the questions I want to ask with regard to the question you just asked about, particularly regarding our January 27th meeting on Monday that begins at 2, is I didn't know if there's any chance of us beginning at 1:30. I have a trustee meeting I need to be on starting at 3:30. And since I'm taking minutes, it would be easier if it helps to bump up to 1:30 and go till 3:30 instead of 2 to 4.
As long as you do it 2 weeks in advance, there's absolutely no problem with changing the time.
I can make that work too. That's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna be gone, so part of my business today is to arrange the February 27th and February 10th meetings, because I will be in Mexico.
Nice.
So, anyway, I was gonna ask Lori, but she strategically did not show up today.
And I'm gone on the 10th as well. I'm in Dallas.
Okay. Well, you might be able to attend from them, but I don't know if I can do it from Mexico. I didn't figure that I probably could. Okay, so I need someone to run the meeting, but as far as your time, you can dictate you can dictate the time as you like it, and we just have to get the notice out. So as part of the putting the agenda together for that meeting, I will put the January 27th meeting at 1:30
Okay.
and notify Candace and 1 or 1:30.
1:30 would be great.
Okay, 1:30 on January 27th. And does that carry over, or is February 10th not?
February
Exactly.
10th,
No.
I'm in Dallas and in meetings. So,
February 10th, okay.
So it would be me and Tom and.
but you
Guy.
guys could,
Lori.
it may be important to just go ahead and have it and just have someone else take the minutes that time. I don't mind missing it. I mean, it's fine. I don't want to hold anyone up in our momentum. So if that works for y'all to convene on the 10th and just have someone else take minutes for one time, that'd be great.
Okay, wow, we got 2 people gone then. All right, well, that'll teach Lori not to miss a meeting. I'm gonna ask her to run the meetings and show her how. I've done it at her house and she's seen how easy it is. And then note taking, she may be willing to do both.
If I don't have anything happening here in the background, I am happy to help take minutes, or at least just kind of fill in some of the summary of things that I'm talking about. I don't know if maybe Tom and Guy, maybe we could, if Lori's running the meeting, or if that's too hard, maybe we just each contribute a few notes and we can use that to put the meeting minutes together.
Yeah, I think especially if we're going to spend most of the time on a presentation, the meeting minutes will be pretty obvious once we get it done. So
Yeah,
I think we could probably bake it for that one.
yeah, and running the meeting is pretty elementary. I mean, you just open it and you close it in between. Mostly it's
And
everyone
remember to
engaging.
start recording.
No, yes, remember to start the recording. So, okay, well, I'll work on those 2 meetings with Lori, and then if she may approach everyone at the first meeting and say who's be willing to help, or else she'll say, I got it covered, no worries. So you guys can step up as needed for the when Lori's in charge. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you to Sarah and Tom for
Yes.
continuing to work on these details and creating presentations both by hand and through your minds to get this more clear for the public, because these are really critical things for our constituency to understand, and by doing these things separately, I think it's helpful. You have a
I
thought?
do have one more topic.
Okay,
Guy sent me some updates for the community plan. He's suggesting that we make it more formal and less informal document. I've looked at several of the, by formal, informal, instead of saying we would say the committee
For the community.
or the community.
community.
Excuse me, not community. I said that wrong, didn't I? All right. I looked at several of them around the area. Some of them are formal, some of them are not. The only hesitation I have about making it more formal is that I have to start messing with the history if we're going to make it not, if we're going to make it formal. And I really was done touching the history, I hoped. I can see, I can see the point. It is a formal document. It is a legal document.
And I think the way it, first of all, they were suggested edits that I sent out. That's the thing I had to learn in Google Docs, is that there's one of the things you can enter is suggested edits. And I think that's a perfect line for what I was doing, is suggesting different edits. And so one, it is part of as we all point out, the county comprehensive plan is referred to as such. And I think that we take out things that, refer to like people's feelings or something or whatever, it is a formal document. It is something once approved by the county. will be kept as such, as a legal document. So that was one of the things that I felt was important. The other thing is that, and we can maybe talk about this at a future meeting. But if you want to before then, there's so many things, especially under our vision and value statements, when we kind of take each one and talk about them. There are items that really, from my mind, kind of get close to actually being part of recommendations that we're making out of this document. And so I suggested to Tom, there's just some points that we make that really are recommendations. And I think the recommendation section of this is going to be important. You know, some of those things are, you know, kind of a little bit, you know, in the kind of thoughts in the sky of something, you know, like we want to recommend moving our fire hall to safer ground out of the tsunami zone, things like that. But there are other recommendations too about forming community and stuff that I think are more realistic as well. So I think that's a question that we should look at and think about. What is it that coming out of this whole process, what is it that we're recommending? I think that's probably one of the more critical things that we're going to develop as in this whole process.
One thing, Guy, if you could print to a PDF your document, because I have an antique version of Word, and the
All right, so there's two.
Google's
Yeah.
version of Word is not the same as mine.
So I could do, so I started off when I was, the first couple pages I did, I put in Word, I created them in Pages, there were suggested edits, and then I found out, I discovered how to work in Google Docs. So what are you asking me to take
Just
to Google Docs and turn it into PDF?
Yes.
Okay.
That way it gets all the formatting gets preserved, because when it gets over here to the PC world, it goes to heck. Sort of.
In terms of our process, I think that's fine to edit. I think we should have a goal in our mind for when we stop giving Tom edits. But I think the process needs to be that we all look at it with whatever the suggestions are from anyone. But then we release it to the community, because it's not just us, it's the community.
Oh, yeah.
And I think us making a recommendation, for example, if we said all cottage clusters should be 6 stories high or something ridiculous. I think we want the community to embrace our recommendations before we get into the hearings and all that part of the process. If possible.
Absolutely, Lynn. Yeah.
It's going to be like, excuse me, it's going to be like the bylaws. The bylaws committee put out a bunch of stuff that said we should do this. And then the community in some parts said, no.
And that's fine. That's what we're doing. We're presenting, we're putting together something to give to the community for them to decide.
Right. Well, it seems important to understand whenever "we" is in there, whether it represents the committee or the community.
Yeah.
Those seem like critical.
Yeah. And that was a seriously bad error that I made, saying one for the other.
Wasn't an error.
Would it be, I mean, to
Anyways,
Oh, Sarah speaking, please.
to support Guy's request, what I have seen other CACs do was something that is a little bit more, I would say emotional, or something that's more of a feel good, or something where you have that human element integrated into a piece of the community plan. They put them in as appendices. Could the history go into an appendices so you didn't have to update it? It could.
That for sure. It is there actually now.
Yeah. So if it's there, could it remain in the style that it was written, that is less formal? Okay.
So more formal is actually more appropriate, is what I'm hearing you say. And anything that isn't, we can cut out to
Well,
put somewhere else.
Or
it-
put in a different part of the document that,
Yeah.
that is where it fits
Okay,
to be looser, yeah.
Right,
fair enough.
yeah, and there's one that was, Richard Powers years ago did a walk through Oceanside. And then he tragically passed away, and it was this beautifully written essay about the community that captured what people thought was the village atmosphere and different things. And you know, it wasn't factual, it wasn't litigious, it wasn't policy driven, it wasn't all those things, but it was still very important to the community. So they put it in the appendices so that it had a place to be honored.
Okay,
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you all today. If there's nothing more, I will offer my gratitude for these meetings, which seems to be substantive and helpful, and we're definitely moving forward. So thanks for all your work and for being here.
Have a great time in
Thank you.
Mexico.
Thank you very much.
And Rand, anything you're tempted to buy in Oaxaca, I already have in my basement.
Oh,
Just pass on it.
Okay, but
okay, Wednesday, we're going to your basement.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Sarah?
I said the sombrero monkey,
Oh,
that in your basement, because if it's not, Randall definitely need
No,
one of them.
Oaxaca doesn't have any monkeys.
Huh?
Oaxaca's pretty old school, but
Yeah.
Oh, it's old school. I'll just, yeah,
okay.
there's a good story
Are
behind
you
it.
renaming the Gulf while you're down there?
The
That's
Gulf of
why I was
California-
asked to come.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the Gulf of California definitely now needs to be renamed, I'm sure, given the political thing. So,
That's
but
a-
that's up to Mexico, I think. It's their Gulf.
Yeah, I'm gonna be as invisible as possible down there as an American. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, guys.
Okay. End recording. Where's the end recording? Share, chat, participants, video. Hmm.